Finally, high refresh monitors are coming down in price, and thank God, because if you want to stand a chance against all these G-Fuel snorting, cracked out 14-year-old Twitch streamers going live to 3 viewers 16 hours a day, you're going to need every advantage you can get. Well, luckily today, we have in my hands what could be on paper a very good gaming monitor with a resolution of 2560 by 1440, a 240Hz refresh rate, size of 27 inches, 16:9 aspect ratio, fast IPS LCD panel type, a response time of allegedly 1 millisecond. Yes, it's Gsync and Freesync compatible, and apparently has HDR10 capabilities. God, they will slap HDR on anything these days, but I'll tell you right up front, this is not what I would consider to be an HDR monitor. But in terms of the ports, here's everything you need to know. Pause the video if necessary. But the important thing is, yes, it is VESA mount compatible, and at a price of $379, it's actually relatively affordable. But is it actually good? Well, let's find out, starting off with those colors. And I'll just say, you know what, the colors, they look good, they're not oversaturated, and they're not too washed out, which is exactly what you want, especially if you're going to be working on video. So good there for at least an LCD panel. But in terms of the actual accuracy out of the box, it was a little bit off here, as you can see. Now, luckily, I have all the tools necessary to properly calibrate this to the 2.2 gamma curve with good RGB balance. And of course, if you want all of the settings for the panel as well as an ICC profile, not only for this monitor, but every single monitor I review, I will have a link to my Patreon in the description below, which also gets you access to the Discord. Highly appreciate everybody who supports me there. But moving on to the color volume, and you know what? It is pretty good. 144% BT709 and 97% roughly DCI-P3 is actually very good for an LCD panel, so no complaints there. But in terms of the brightness and HDR, once again, let's talk about that HDR, because this is, I'm just gonna say it, this is not an HDR monitor. I mean, yeah, you can call it that because it has an HDR mode, but I certainly would not. I mean, not only did it not have any local dimming capabilities in my testing, but we're also talking about what appears to be an 8-bit panel, and it doesn't get extraordinarily bright either. So no, don't buy this expecting a good HDR experience. Just keep it in SDR. For that reason, I only tested this in SDR. HDR would be a complete waste of my time. Now, starting off with the brightness in 100% window, it is actually pretty good. 371 nits is actually towards the top of my list of LCD displays, although I did throw in Mini LED and WOLED there as well to show you that yes, it is going to be brighter than WOLED full screen, but it's going to fall far short of Mini LED. Now, in a 10% window, it is a little bit different. It's going to be actually towards the back of the charts here at 366 nits, although that is perfectly acceptable for an LCD display. But now moving on to minimum brightness, something that's important not only for HDR, but just for contrast in general. And unfortunately here, guys, this is not too good. I measured a minimum brightness of just 0.23 nits, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you compare it to, you know, especially OLED, which is 0, which means infinite contrast ratio, but even other LCDs, it's actually quite a bit behind some other ones that I've been testing. In fact, it gives it a contrast ratio of just 1,539 to 1, which is overall not that impressive. However, this is a gaming focused display. It's more for competitive gaming, and thus we will be taking a look at next the total system latency, one of the most important metrics for a gaming monitor. And here you can see that it's right up near the front of the chart. 26 milliseconds of total system latency is very, very good, and this would be certainly a great gaming monitor in terms of latency. But now moving on to the UFO motion test. Is it going to look good in motion? And overall, I'm going to say yes, this is pretty good in motion at 240 Hertz. It's all right at 120 Hertz, but if you can only run this monitor at 60 Hertz, please don't buy it, as you're going to get a very, very blurry image. So definitely make sure that you're getting the highest frame rates possible to take full advantage of this panel. And if we do compare it to something like OLED, for example, yes, the OLED is definitely more clean in motion. There's none of that trailing going on, although it is going to be faster than something like a 144 Hertz mini LED panel that you can see on the very right. But now let's take a look at the text clarity and sub-pixel layout. And I will say that overall the text clarity is decent, but because it does have a fairly blurry finish and also it is just 1440p. It's not necessarily going to be the absolute most clear display on the market. Of course, higher resolutions will give you more clear text, and a better finish will also help that as well, but with a regular RGB layout, it is going to be pretty decent overall. But speaking of the finish, yes, it's using a hideous matte finish. Yuck, I cannot believe the manufacturers continue to try and use this. It looks absolutely disgusting. I'd love to see monitors move on to glossy finishes, but to be honest with you guys, for something that is 1440p and not going to be having the best contrast ratios anyway, I don't think it's as important on this display, and if it allows them to go for a cheaper price, then I'm fine with the inclusion of a matte finish, as that's more important when it comes to super high resolutions, OLED, mini LED, that sort of thing. Not as much of a concern for this type of a panel. But in terms of the viewing angles, honestly, it's actually pretty dang good for an LCD overall. Whether you're looking up or down or left or right, it actually retained the majority of the color without it washing out too much. But the uniformity was definitely going to be a little bit different. I mean, not only, at least on my panel, did I measure a significant difference in brightness on a full white screen from corner to corner, but on top of that, you can see that there is also significant backlight bleed in darker scenes as well. But I will mention that I had no issues with this monitor, which is really nice to see. So overall, is this worth the $379? And I will say this is actually, I'd say, a pretty good gaming monitor. It's got great motion, it's got also great latency as well, and the resolution is high enough for things to look pretty good. But for me to get really excited about it, I think it would have to be at roughly $329 or lower before I start to tell you guys, like, yes, rush out and go and buy this. So I'm going to say, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I would recommend purchasing this, but I'm not super enthusiastic about it. Whether you're looking to connect a new console, gaming PC, or just need a fast and reliable HDMI cable to connect over long distances, Rupro has you covered with their certified 8K HDMI 2.1 fiber optic cable, available in sizes of up to 50 feet and can deliver a perfect full 48 gigabits per second connection over distances other cables could only dream of reaching. And with 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth, it can easily drive 8K 60 FPS or 4K 144 FPS 10-bit HDR video through its ultra-thin, flexible, and durable housing, and it even supports ER. So if you're in the market for a cable that can drive a beautiful new TV or monitor, be sure to check out Rupro on Amazon today.